Today on Senior Snoops, we're going to share some of the top secret modifications that we made to our fishing kayak. Come join us. Today we're in Senior Snoops' lair and workshop, and we're going to talk about some of the modifications that we've made to our FeelFree Lure II tandem kayak. We're going to talk about how we added a trolling motor, remote controls, and a lithium-ion battery that fits right into one of the pods and is hidden. It was custom made for us. So let's get started. We're going to start with an overview of the Lure II tandem kayak. This is the very front of the kayak. You can see that there is a 6-inch hatch in the front. I can say from a review standpoint that this is the only internal access besides the fishing pole holders that you have in the whole kayak. So it makes it pretty tough to run some wires and that kind of thing, so we had to do a little bit of special engineering to make everything work. The kayak is set up with 2 pods. You can see one that's got a blue square, looks almost like a book in it. Seats, another pod with a fish finder, our back seat, and then the back portion with the trolling motor. And so we're going to go into each little part of this and tell you what we did and how we did it and go from there. As I mentioned, we have the 6-inch hatch in the front, and we did put in a connection here that's waterproof that goes into the boat, and then we ran our wiring down the side of the boat. This is a 40 amp hour lithium ion battery that was custom made for us by TOBattery. You can find them on ebay.com, and I needed one that was 2 inches wide, 7 inches tall, and then 10 inches to fit into the pod, and it fits right down into the center of the pod. We've got a 30 amp circuit breaker that's built into there too, so if we have any issues with it, we can take care of that. The breaker will pop, and then the cover, like I mentioned, fits right over the top of it. We can go ahead and we can latch it down, and you don't even know there's a battery in there. Majority of the work happened back in this portion of the kayak. One of the things that we had to do is we had to put the controls in a place that was easily accessed from the seat. We can slide them off. They're attached through the rails on the side, and so that we can go ahead and slide it back, slide it forward if we want to row. And the cable's long enough to where if we need to move it all the way up to the pedals that we can do that. The wires came back through and actually terminated back here. We have a cable that comes through there that's basically a 2-wire cable that's waterproof. And so it comes through, and we put 2 wires connected here. This is a 4-wire connector that we bought off of Amazon. See, it's got 4 prongs there. 2 go for the power to the control unit. The other 2 is the power coming back to the trolling motor. Now what this does is there's a power modulator in there where we can go ahead and flip a switch, put it forward, and turn up the speed, whatever speed that we need to go. And so we've got power from here back to the 4-way plug, and then we came out of the 4-way plug with another 2-wire plug that goes to the trolling motor. We made a custom mount for the trolling motor, and we'll talk about that in a minute. You can see that we have an anchor wizard here. So there's a number of things that we've done to enhance the kayak and make it easier for us old people to to maneuver with it. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk about the pedals and the cable system that we have there. We used a couple of old keychains that we had laying around to hook things to, so the cables can be detached pretty quickly if you want to change pedals or don't want to use the cables and have them out of the way. Besides crimping them at each end, we used heat shrink to kind of hold everything together, make sure there wasn't any sharp edges. And then coming back to the back, we just ran, like I mentioned, the cables through the tubes, a couple of eye bolts on the side, and we'll get a little bit more into the whole mount and everything else. But it steers pretty nice. And one of the things that we were concerned about too is that since the motor sits to the bottom of the boat, when we're loading and unloading the boat, the other part of it is how are we going to get the motor out of the way? There was a couple of elaborate ideas that we came up with to do that. One is to replace the pin that pivots and then have another piece that was welded to it that would, with a rope you could pull on it and it would release the catch. So you could pull it up and it would lock into place. The simplest way to do it that we found was to go ahead and just use a wire tie to tie the lock forward, and that way the motor itself is free to move. It's not locked into place. And with the Kayak, we get into some pretty shallow water, so the nice thing about that is if the motor should hit something, it just pops up rather than trying to go against the bottom of the boat and lift it. So we installed a rope. That's what this is, a rope that goes forward with the handle. So when you pull on the handle and the rope, it pulls the motor up out of the way. It locks into place, and that way you can keep the motor up out of the way when you're loading, unloading, and you get into some shallow water, and then just release it and it goes back down to where it's supposed to be. The motor itself is a 40-pound thrust MinnKota Endura motor. Not the least expensive one out there, but the next step up, I think. And we went with the 40 just because we have a longer Kayak. We scoured YouTube for different videos. We took a look at different things to how can we modify this and make it work. And one of the things that we found is that most of the kayaks that were being motorized were in the 10 to 12 foot range. And this being 14.5 and weighing 100 pounds plus you have two old people in there and fishing gear, all the other good stuff, it really does take up a little bit of power in order to move it. So we went with the 40-pound thrust. As you can see, there's no controls at the very top. We took those off, wired directly to the red and black wire in here. There's also a yellow and white wire that goes to the controls so that you can set the speed if you have the whole unit. We didn't want to do that, so we pushed the white and yellow wires back down into the tube and then just use the red and black, and we'll control the amount of power that the motor gets through the controller. As we mentioned, it is free flowing. You can see that we have two eyelets here on each side that the cables are attached to for the steering. This one nut that locks it into place for height, you need to make sure that you have that loose so the motor turns pretty freely. We built an aluminum setup originally to be able to tip the whole unit forward using the mount itself and then locking in the motor solid. The issue with that is it was very, very, very heavy. And so it was sitting in the seat, grabbing hold of the rope. It took quite a bit to get it up. And so rather than tipping the Kayak over, we decided that we'd just go ahead and engineer something a little bit simpler by attaching here, going ahead and use the mechanism of the mount itself and then the rope system. We still kept the nylon bearings here. It's pretty easy to mount. I can loosen these up on both sides, pull the whole unit off in a matter of minutes. There's a hole in the Kayak that sits right down in here for the rudder pin. And so we went ahead and went through the rudder pin with a real long bolt with a washer nut at the top and another one on the bottom with a wing nut to hold it into place and make it part of the kayak. So we're now back to the front of the boat. We're going to basically plug everything back in. And you can see here we have a connection there coming out of the pod that has our battery. So what we'll do is we'll plug that in. The good thing is there wasn't any sparks, so all is good so far. And then as we're going down the side of the boat, here's our remote control. The box is bigger than it needs to be, and that's one of the things that we were wrestling with. It would be real simplistic to make a real small control, but the problem is the power modulator is about that size, and so we need to have another box someplace. Since we don't have storage inside, we'd have to find another place to put it. So I just decided to stick it up here. It's if you're familiar with FeelFree, FeelFree has their own tracking system with dimensions that are different than everybody else. So this is a FeelFree special mount plate that you can buy from them. And then we just mounted it to another piece of aluminum to give it some stability. And then there it is, it's in the track. So we can actually loosen it, grab it and slide it forward. Sometimes it takes more than one hand just because of the weight of it. But we can slide it up and out of the way so that we don't have to worry about hitting it with an oar if we decide that we want to row. But then we can slide it back to the end, lock it down again, and that way it won't move. This is forward, reverse. Click on the forward, turn the dial until the motor starts to spin. And you can dial it way down. You have to give it a little bit to get it going. But what we'll do is we'll take a look. And you can see how slow it spins. So it's going to give you some pretty good trolling. And then it'll even go a little slower than that if you want to take the time to adjust it. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn it up. And you can watch it increase in speed as we turn it up. That's full blast forward. And then we'll go ahead and put it in reverse. And then we'll come back the other way. Now one thing I did notice, there's full speed. One thing I did notice was when you put it into reverse, since it's not locked in back here at the pin, then what happens is the motor wants to do this. So what I found is I've got to start it off real slow, and then it doesn't jump in reverse. Another thing too is that with the close-knit cable positions down here, you can see where they go through those tubes on each side. There's the full range of the motor. In other words, to be able to turn it at 90 degrees doesn't really happen. But what I'll do is I'll do a quick walk through here, and that way you can see everything that we've done and how we've done it, in case you want to try this on your own at home. And then, like I mentioned, this is just a regular monopod, and you can see that there's a GoPro on top, and then we just use the tracking system to tie it down. I've actually got it screwed into the anchor wizard, which is another option that we've added on here. Here's our two connections. I'm going to have to shorten up the wires for the motor, because what it does is it just takes up too much of our storage here. And then the anchor wizard going across here, the control unit. You can see the pedals that we have cabled up. And then here's the rope. And then the cable on the other side. And then once again, here is our pod that has the battery in it with the connection right there. Well, being today is a work day, it doesn't look like we're going to get out in the kayak this afternoon. Probably have to wait till the weekend. But all that being said, we're pretty excited about how it all turned out. To be honest with you, we did this once before, had a battery in a battery box, got into some pretty heavy wind, got sideways, and flipped the kayak over. In it went the battery box, the control unit. So what it did was it gave us an opportunity to re-engineer everything and take another look at it and how we wanted it to do it, how we wanted to put it together. So I guess there was a blessing in there somewhere. But we'll go ahead and we'll do another video when we get the kayak out in the water, and we'll see how fast it goes. We'll see how well it works, how well it steers, and we'll do a separate video and give you a report on that. We appreciate your time and appreciate you watching Senior Snoops. Don't forget to like our videos. Please comment, because we'd love to hear from you. And please subscribe. Thanks for joining us today. Well, that closes out another fun adventure for Senior Snoops. Hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and even subscribe. Thanks for joining us, Senior Snoops.